Men often come to me not for answers, but for relief from a pain they can't name. They sit with heavy hearts asking, what do I do when she stops caring, when she pulls away like I was never there? And every time I tell them the same truth. You're not broken. You're not powerless. You're just asking the wrong question. You don't fix silence by chasing it. You don't fix distance by collapsing into it. You shift the frame. Because you're not a victim. You're not here to beg for validation. You're a man, or at least you're meant to be walking toward that. And here's where everything changes. You don't teach her what she lost by arguing. You teach her by becoming someone she can't afford to overlook. A man who is grounded, purposeful, alive with quiet fire. That's not bitterness. That's not revenge. That's evolution. In today's world, attention is more than curiosity. It's currency, and when someone withholds it without reason, when you've offered truth, presence, and effort, it's not your job to convince them. It's your job to recognize the signal, and your response, not anger, not sarcasm, not silent punishment, but structure, realignment. You anchor yourself back to what matters, your goals, your body, your mission, your code. You don't spiral. You don't sulk. You upgrade. That's the lesson she'll feel, not from what you say, but from what she no longer has access to, if she can't see the value in a man who is forging himself in the discipline of purpose. That's her blind spot to carry, not your shame to fix. But she'll never feel that loss if you keep showing up for someone who never earned the right to receive you. This isn't about power games. It's about self-respect. Real relationships aren't built on control, but on mutual willingness. Two people choosing each other again and again. But when she pulls back without a word, when she slowly stops showing up, that choice becomes one-sided, and the silent withdrawal isn't harmless. It's the breaking of an unspoken contract. If you chase her while she's withdrawing, you confirm the imbalance. You reinforce her silence with your pursuit. But when you pause, when you step back with clarity and calm, you either shift the dynamic or you rise above it entirely. One of the most heartbreaking mistakes a man can make is allowing himself to become a side note in a story where he used to be the center. You must never be an option. You are not an afterthought. You are not someone to be remembered only when she's bored or lonely. You must be chosen. And to be truly chosen, you must first choose yourself. A man who disrespects himself will always attract people who mirror that same disregard. Self-respect isn't a statement. It's a posture. You live it long before anyone recognizes it. You walk it before anyone applauds it. Before you expect devotion or loyalty or consistency, ask yourself honestly, have I built a life that deserves it? You don't earn value by being constantly available. You earn value by being grounded in something greater than approval. When she ignores you, it's not a challenge to prove yourself. It's a reflection, a mirror showing you what part of your power you've given away. The moment her attention becomes your emotional oxygen, you've already left your throne. You've traded your authority for the illusion of closeness, but that throne, it was never hers to give back. It's yours to reclaim. Self-respect begins the instant you stop negotiating with people who don't value your presence. You don't teach her your worth by pleading for a reply. You teach her by becoming too aligned, too focused, too purposeful, to need one. If your drive dies in her absence, you never had a drive powerful enough to begin with. You must become a man whose direction doesn't shift with the emotional weather of others. She is not your compass. She is not your source. Do not make her validation your belief system. You were not built to orbit someone's approval. Build a life so meaningful that even rejection becomes momentum. Let her absence echo in the silence. But don't let it rewrite your identity. You are not meant to be noticed by everyone. You are meant to be unforgettable to the right ones, because a woman cannot admire the man who needs her to breathe. She's not drawn to the man who clings. She's drawn to the one who stands, even when ignored, even when overlooked. He continues to rise, because true self-respect isn't loud. It's not about declaring your worth. It's about embodying it, silently, steadily. And here's the truth most men don't realize. A woman can't feel safe with a man who needs her approval to breathe. If your identity collapses the moment she looks away, she won't admire you. Not because she's cruel, but because you've given her power over something that was never hers to hold. You teach her how to treat you by how you treat yourself when she's not looking. Your standards, your posture, your peace, they all speak louder than your words. If you crumble every time she pulls back, she will test you again, not to hurt you, but to see what you're made of. It's instinct. And the masculine must remain grounded, especially when the emotional air gets stormy. What pulls her in isn't desperation. It's discipline, not control, but calm leadership. She doesn't crave a follower. She seeks a man who knows when to lead and when to leave. If your identity is tethered to her reaction, you disappear the moment her attention shifts. A man with no internal compass will always drift in someone else's tide. Respect cannot be earned by lowering yourself to keep her interest. Love rooted in need is not love. It's survival in disguise. You're not here to fill the empty spaces of her boredom. You're here to build something. Your time, your energy, your attention. These are not tools to win her back. They are sacred gifts and must be given with intention, not desperation. Stop trying to audition for a part in her story. Start writing your own. Every time you shrink to keep her close, you abandon the man you were becoming. Let her ignore the man who is evolving. Let her miss what she no longer understands. You are not less just because she can't see your light. You are only invisible to those who lack vision. If you want loyalty, you must first show loyalty to yourself. In your habits, in your purpose, in the way you show up for yourself every day. The tragedy is not her walking away. It's that you forgot who you were when she did. You were not created to be her emotional safety net. While she looks around for something shinier, she's not your enemy. She's just no longer aligned with your path. And you don't punish her. You refine yourself. Quietly, powerfully. Chasing her attention is not pursuit. It's the surrendering of your center. Strength is not in shouting your worth. It's in walking away without flinching when you're not being seen. The man who knows his value never has to convince anyone of it. He simply lives in such alignment that his absence becomes more noticeable than his presence ever was. Be the man whose absence lingers like a lesson, not the one who fades in the noise of need. Don't become forgettable in pursuit of being forgiven. Become undeniable through evolution. You don't gain power by demanding to be seen. You gain it when your presence becomes so purposeful, so rare, that your silence speaks louder than your words ever could. If she watches you bend your values, just to keep her attention, she will never believe in your leadership. Because leadership requires boundaries. It requires conviction. And a man without conviction is not inspiring. He's replaceable. When you elevate in silence, she has two choices: grow to meet you, or vanish in your rear view. Both are gifts. You don't chase attention. You command respect by no longer chasing what devalues you. The day you stop checking your phone, wondering if she noticed your absence, is the day you reclaim yourself. Self-respect isn't noise. It's the quiet rhythm of a man who no longer needs to prove he's worthy. Let her ignore the man who is quietly building something greater. Let her wonder where the chaos went and why peace now feels like distance. You don't owe her a reaction. You owe yourself consistency. You are not a storm begging for notice. You are the sky after the fire, clear, calm, and untouchable. Let her feel the space you no longer fill, not to hurt her, but to remind yourself that your presence was never meant to be used carelessly. Silence, when wielded with discipline, is more powerful than any speech. You don't teach her by trying to convince her. You teach her by becoming someone she no longer has access to. If your worth skyrockets the moment you leave, then it was never truly seen while you stayed. Distance is not rejection, it is refinement. The separation you choose is the mirror where your truest form appears. Don't fear solitude. It's the proving ground of real strength. The man who is whole alone cannot be manipulated by affection. Stop rehearsing lines for her approval. Start living by your own script. Stop chasing closure. Start creating clarity. You don't rise by replacing her. You rise by replacing the weaker version of you, who needed her to feel valid. You are not an extra in her story. You are the author of your own. You are not an option. You are a standard. And if she can't match it, you don't lower it. You enforce it. Women do not stay where there is no spine. They test you, not out of cruelty, but to see if you still stand when the winds of emotion blow hard. A man who holds his ground without rage, without retreat, becomes unforgettable. Your calmness is power. Your restraint is power. Your absence is power. Because it is in the moments when you say nothing that everything becomes clear. You don't become magnetic by being available. You become magnetic by being aligned. You don't attract loyalty by needing it. You attract it by living in truth, unbothered, unwavering. So let her feel what it's like to lose access to a man who built peace from pain, who chose depth over drama, who did not beg to be kept. Let your absence become your instruction. Let your silence become her reflection. Let your evolution do the talking. Boundaries aren't walls to keep her out. They're the shape of your strength. They don't restrict intimacy. They define it. A woman can't feel safe in your presence if you don't know where you end and where her emotions begin. Without clear edges, you invite confusion. You invite chaos. You see, women don't test boundaries to destroy them. They test them to feel them, to know where the frame is, to see if you'll protect your core when she starts to spin. The feminine isn't wicked, it's wild, and that wildness isn't looking for a leash. It's looking for a center it can trust. When you lack boundaries, you become a mirror. You reflect her mood, not your mission, and in doing so, you lose her trust. She won't tell you directly, but she will begin to push harder to see if you'll finally push back. Not with aggression, but with presence, with clarity, with conviction. If she disrespects you and you stay silent, you're not being patient. You're being permissive. She doesn't read silence as strength when it hides fear. She reads it as surrender. And now you've taught her something, not with words, but with absence. You've taught her that your peace is negotiable, that your standards bend when she raises her voice. That's not strength. That's self-abandonment. You weren't meant to be her cushion. You were meant to be her ground. And ground doesn't move just because the storm rages. You don't gain respect by being agreeable. You gain it by being unshakable, not rigid, rooted. The man she trusts isn't the one who nods through discomfort. It's the one who calmly says, "That's not acceptable," and then holds that line. Boundaries are the edge between love and manipulation, between care and control, between surrender and loss. They tell her, "This is where I stand, and if you step past this, you'll meet a version of me that's willing to walk away." Not because you don't care, but because you've cared too long to keep betraying yourself. You think she'll leave if you draw the line. But the truth is, she's already drifting when you don't. Because no woman can respect a man who erases himself to keep her emotions in check. She doesn't want to feel like she's overpowering you. She wants to feel your strength in a way that doesn't need force. That means you must stop explaining your worth and start embodying it. She doesn't want the man who adjusts himself to avoid conflict. She wants the one who stays true, even when challenged. She doesn't want constant agreement. She wants a boundary that doesn't tremble when tested. And here's the secret. She will test you, not because she's cruel, but because she's instinctive. She needs to know if what you say is who you are. When her emotion rises, do you rise with it? or do you become the anchor? If you collapse with her chaos, she learns she cannot trust your leadership, because true leadership doesn't match the storm. It steadies it. You don't need to control her. You need to control yourself. You don't need to explain your boundary. You need to enforce it with calm, with consistency, with quiet certainty, because in a world where men yell or withdraw, a man who holds his ground without drama becomes magnetic. You are not here to fix her every mood. You're here to protect the structure. That allows love to grow. Without structure, love suffocates. It spills everywhere, and she drowns in her own fire. You were never meant to be her therapist. You were meant to be her frame, and frames don't move when the painting shifts. So what's the truth? If you want her respect, stop fearing her reaction. Start respecting your limits. When she crosses the line, don't argue. Don't explain. Stand. When she yells, don't yell back. Don't run. Remain. Your stability is her sanctuary, and the more consistently you defend your peace, the more she'll relax into it. Because deep down, she's not trying to find control. She's trying to find safety, and that only comes from a man who knows who he is and refuses to trade it for temporary approval. You don't lead by pleasing, you lead by defining. Boundaries aren't rejection, they're respect. They don't push her away. They show her the doorway to something real. A man without boundaries doesn't offer love. He offers access, and access without standards leads to erosion. The more available you are without discernment, the more invisible you become. You see, she doesn't fall for the man who bends at every turn. She falls for the man who knows when to stand still. Because chaos doesn't seek softness. It seeks stability. When she's spinning emotionally, she's not testing your love. She's testing your structure, not to break it, but to feel it. That's why she pushes. That's why she challenges, to see what you'll protect. When things get heated, if you fold, she loses trust. Not because she wants dominance, but because she needs to feel held by something stronger than emotion. She doesn't need you to fix her feelings. She needs to feel that yours aren't dictated by hers. This is where most men collapse, trying to solve every emotional wave, instead of standing like the shoreline that meets it. You don't lead by absorbing chaos. You lead by containing it. Without losing your clarity, you are not her therapist. You are not her emotional sponge. You are the edge. That defines the shape of the relationship. She wants to feel your gravity, not your neediness. Because the more you chase peace, through pleasing, the more she feels alone in her storm. But the moment you stop chasing and start anchoring, everything changes. Boundaries are not obstacles to connection. They are the framework where trust can grow. They show her what you protect, and by extension, how much you value yourself. Because if you let her cross every line, she learns your soul has no gate. And that kind of man cannot lead a life worth respecting. She needs to feel that even in her most chaotic moments, you will not abandon yourself, that you will not shrink your truth to soothe her pain, that you will not betray your values to keep temporary peace. That's what makes her feel safe, not your compliance, your conviction. And here's what happens. When you hold the line, she stops testing. She starts trusting. She stops performing. She starts relaxing. Why? Because now she knows she's with a man who can weather her fire without flinching. She doesn't need a mirror. She needs a mountain. She doesn't need constant approval. She needs the comfort of your consistency. And consistency only comes from a man who's chosen order over comfort, direction over indulgence, truth over approval. The world is full of noise. She's looking for a signal. And your boundaries are that signal. They don't say, stay away. They say, respect lives here. They don't reject her. They reveal the version of you that cannot be manipulated by love. That's the man she follows. That's the man she admires. Not because he forces, but because he never folds. She won't tell you she respects your boundaries. She'll just show you by how deeply she trusts you, by how safe she feels, resting in your frame. Because when you stop trying to keep her and start keeping yourself, she finally feels she's with a man worth staying for. The price of having no boundaries isn't just stress. It's the slow erosion of your peace, the distortion of your purpose, and eventually, the loss of your place in her life. You were not born to absorb chaos. You were built to transform it, to redirect fire into focus and silence into strength. You don't teach her the value of your presence by explaining it. You teach it by withholding it from those who mishandle it. It's not through anger, not through begging. It's through calm disappearance, through a quiet elevation. She's no longer invited to witness. You must become the man whose worth is unshakable, whose time is not a free offering, whose soul isn't bargained for in the court of attention. There is no power in holding on to someone who lets go of your value. The power is in building a life so deeply anchored in meaning that her absence feels irrelevant. Set boundaries not to punish, but to preserve. Walk away not to prove a point, but to protect the man you're still becoming. You're not just teaching her a lesson, you're teaching yourself a law. That love without respect is poison, that stillness is strength, and that the man who chooses himself never begs again. Because the moment you stop chasing, you begin choosing. And the man who chooses himself is never ignored again. Not by her, not by the world, and most importantly, not by the man in the mirror.